listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk near.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord.
Praise God! Give away.
Welcome to the House by Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me today will be Derek. Hello. And Sean.
Hello.
And this is part 2 of our 2017 wrap-up. We're giving some different... we've got some different categories and awards we're giving out for movies released during 2017. And then we'll also go through some of the stuff we're looking forward to in 2018 and personal favorites that fall in any genre outside of horror.
Unfortunately, if you're listening to the audio version of this, you won't be able to hear any of it because we are just going to do charades to describe everything for the rest of this.
The best movie is...
You know, you can't talk in charades. You just have to mimic it out.
Or what's the other game where you can't say the word, you can't say something that rhymes?
Pictionary.
I don't remember.
Who cares? We're not doing that.
We're not doing party games. We're doing podcasts. We're doing
Same.
goddamn
So favorite
podcast.
television, favorite horror movie, and
Yes.
then 2018 releases we're looking forward
So
to.
for
And
2017,
we might discuss our own personal
Yeah.
favorites.
So
Not
for 2017, we're doing finish this episode. So the prior episode, we went through the
bunch of
favorite nostalgia-based property, which we gave to Stranger Things season 2. The biggest surprise, which we gave to Split for what that movie achieved overall.
Yep.
Biggest disappointment was Alien Covenant because it was Sir Ridley back with the franchise, and seems like they kind of backtracked and went away from doing new original things.
Yeah, they kind of just. Yeah.
And then favorite Netflix movie, we gave it to I Don't Feel at Home in This World Anymore.
Oh, we got the title right.
Which is, well, I'm reading it, so it's a little bit easier, which was just kind of like
Worst title, though.
from Macon Blair, who is involved in Blue Ruin and Green Room and Jeremy Saulnier. So it comes from that kind of world, so it's kind of...
It's good.
yeah, so something to check out if you haven't seen
very
it.
good.
And this episode will go through our favorite television show of the year and favorite horror movie of the year, some personal favorites that fall outside of that, and 2018 things to look forward to. So not 2018 things to look forward to, movies from 2018 to look forward to. So getting into the discussion. So the favorite television show of the year. So some caveats on this. So one thing that we realized too, or that I realized when doing the preparation for this episode, is that Ash vs. Evil Dead Season 2 ended in 2016, not 2017, and they didn't air a new season, so that show is absent from this discussion because Season 2 ended in December
It's not
of 2016. So that show's not around.
And these are shows more with a horror or macabre slant.
And
I
two,
think, you know.
we're not include like we didn't include like Game of Thrones. It's been on for however many seasons.
I've never watched
Didn't
an episode.
include Walking Dead because I even stopped watching
It's
it.
not good. The ratings are plummeting on it.
So, like Walking Dead has had. So there's been a lot of people that have serious issues with the quality of it.
Even diehard fans are seemingly having
Dropping
issues.
off,
Yeah, because their ratings are getting.
So
very
it's
bad.
they're having the worst ratings they've had like since season 2. And it's a show that Jeffrey Dean Morgan coming in as Negan was supposed to be like this big show-saving element, but then I think they just mishandled it from the get-go. And so we're not including Walking Dead because none of us, like all of us stopped watching it.
I haven't watched an actual episode of it since season 1.
And then there's
Same here.
and then there's
We
other
stopped before you, William.
yeah. So that's not included. And then like stuff like
American Horror Story. Was that this year? Right?
Did
Did you watch that?
No, I didn't. That was the cult
Okay.
one. I watched the premiere episode and was like, yeah, I don't really care about clowns. And Sarah Pauli just not Sarah Pauli.
Paulson?
Sarah Paulson just like being a snowflake that I'm sure went somewhere at some point. It's just those shows to me usually start strong and then fall apart in the back half. To me, that this didn't even start strong, I'm like, I'm not investing the time. So not to be super dismissive, but in terms of things that at least 2 of us watched, so Twin Peaks The Return or Twin Peaks Season 3, whatever we call it. Sean and I did an entire series of videos about it. Did a video about the book that came out after the show ended, Twin Peaks: The Final Dossier. We did a short film that was Twin Peaks inspired. And so as you know, we like that show. And then Derek, have you watched all the original 2 seasons?
I watched the first season. Courtney's watched the first two. I've only watched the first season.
Yeah, so you need to watch the rest of that.
Yeah,
so
and I
you
need to
can
watch
get caught up.
season 3.
Because we showed you some of the stuff that happened.
Yeah, it looks awesome. I want to watch it.
Stranger Things season 2 or Stranger Things 2, however you prefer to describe it, which was our pick as the favorite nostalgia. Mindhunter, which is the serial killer show that was produced by David Fincher and feels very much at home in that world.
And you directed what, 4 episodes of that?
Yeah, he directed a handful of episodes, and it's a show that is a period piece set in like the 70s or late 70s, and it feels like that time period, and it has that kind of classic greenish hue to it that like you see from a lot of Fincher stuff. About serial killers, about some real serial killers.
And it's kind of like the development of like profiling, like as far as like serial killers for the FBI, because it was
Like,
before serial killers were
it's-
identified, right?
It's based on some true stories, not 100%. Like not these are all accurate depictions of everything that happens. Just kind of inspired by the guy that started like the criminal profiling program within the FBI,
which is interesting.
and then it does deal with some real life serial killers, which is very interesting.
And the Zodiac is a myth.
You mean Ted Cruz?
Yeah.
So
Fake news.
Mindhunter was a show that at least 2 of us watched, and then like Black Mirror season 4. I think I'm the only one that. So you haven't, Derek? You haven't watched any of it, right?
No, I would like to. But
and then
no.
Sean, you watched it?
I've only watched a couple episodes of Black Mirror before, but
Okay.
none of the new season.
Okay.
I'm gonna throw a show in there that none of you have watched. I don't think it's a podcast I listen to called Lore. And
Oh, I watched Lore.
yeah, I really like that because it's kind of cool because it's just about real world stuff, like just kind of like lores. Like this is where this came from. They go into the back story of it, and then it got picked up for a pretty limited release on Amazon this year for like 6 episodes. T2 is in it, which is kind of nice.
Oh,
seeing
Robert
him.
Patrick.
Yeah, you have a couple familiar faces in the episodes, which is cool because it makes the production value feel a little higher. But it's essentially just they take real world myths, like maybe where this fairy tale came from, or where like the living doll stuff came from, and they explain it with the stories that it really came from. And I thought it was really interesting because it's kind of like in the macabre style, you know. But it's all based on mostly real world stuff and where these different myths or like urban legends came from, or just generalized like stories. And, so it's something that I thought was really interesting. It's only like 6 episodes.
There's 6 episodes.
And then maybe 30, 40 minutes a piece.
Is it on Amazon or Netflix?
It's on Amazon Prime. So too, like just to other wise clarify. So the Lore podcast is just where they go into, so for vampires, like one of the episodes is about where the origin of the vampire myth comes from and where, Bram Stoker was inspired with it, to do the Dracula story. Yeah. So it's interesting like that. And the show is interspersed of like narration from like Aaron Minke, who is the guy who does the podcast too. And to clarify, he's not like a radio announcer voice where it's like the trailer voice. Like no, it's more of a normal guy like us. Just more well edited.
But I just really like that he went from doing a podcast. It's incredibly interesting to getting his own TV show.
Well, yeah, it went from like a podcast to, they have the podcast. They've done live shows of it. Now they have this TV show. And I think the same thing, the podcast Welcome to Night Vale, which is like a fictional podcast about radio announcer, like the local public radio guy in a town that's kind of like Twin Peaks-esque with crazy stuff going on, is getting, like, they've done live tours. I think they're getting a show based on it. But Lore, also to me, if you've watched those different shows like on Discovery Channel or History Channel,
it's a much better version of that.
It's better production value recreations
with actual actors and actresses
of historical things. It's still not super high quality because it's recreations within an episode that's like a self-contained
But
story.
it is kind of nice because you'll see a bunch of people and they're like, man, they look really familiar. And you go find out that the actor or actress from something else. So that makes it nice because you always have a decent lead, where the acting isn't like, I hate to keep doing Arrested Development stuff, but there was a skit where they would go reenact like crimes and it was like terrible act. It's not, it's not that. It's pretty good. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so that is something too that you can check out. And it's only 6 episodes. If you're into kind of
the macabre, and then
and it's also just like the origins behind werewolf legend and vampire legend. Sometimes the episodes can kind of veer off a little bit into unrelated things.
Yeah.
Spend a bit of time on stuff that doesn't seem like it's going to tie back in.
But still all really interesting.
And then like another show that I watched and no one else watched that I would recommend checking out is Alias Grace that's on Netflix. It is like there's definitely horror elements in it. It's just about a character who is accused of murder and you're just kind of like psychiatrist is talking to her and kind of figuring out like what all led up to what happened. And it's got like unsettling imagery and it's set.
Was that the USA thing?
No, it's on Netflix.
Oh,
And
there's one that they did that like on USA with Jessica Biel or something.
Jessica Biel, like
Whatever her name
Biel?
is. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, it's not that. So this like the setting of it takes place in Canada prior to like the American Civil War and stuff. So interesting time period, well done. The acting in it was really good, and there are some horror elements in it. So I was interested in that show, and it's something I would recommend checking out. But everybody else didn't watch it, so it's not really in contention.
Something else I want to give props to that is not really horror related at all, but is Godless on Netflix, the Western series.
Yeah.
So Twin Peaks is my favorite show of the year. It's my favorite everything of the year. But Godless is right in like number 2 as far as shows goes for me. I thought that show is phenomenal. It's a mini series, but Jeff Daniels is in it.
Yeah.
It's got a great cast. I think it's
I've heard a lot of good things about it.
It's definitely worth watching for
Yeah,
sure.
I want to check that
And
out.
Nicole does not like Westerns, and she was not super excited about watching it. And she always is like, I hate Westerns. We finished it. She really didn't say much, but then a couple days later, she was like, yeah, I should recommend that show to Mom. And then a couple days later, she's like, that show was really good. So like, as somebody who doesn't even like Westerns, it won her over. It's super enjoyable. And it's nice that it's just a limited series. They said they may do more with it, but they tell one story. You know what I mean? And it's like, even if they stay in that world, it is just the West. They could bring out more characters and kind of follow them along. But yeah, it's really satisfying little story arc, I think.
Yeah, so basically when it comes down to it, so we're talking about Twin Peaks, Stranger Things, Season 2, or Mindhunter.
Eric, what's yours?
Well,
Because you haven't watched all those,
I haven't
though,
seen
right?
Twin
Yeah.
Peaks. And I know.
No, I know. That's what
I've
I'm
watched
wondering.
some of Mindhunter. I mean, for me, it's going to be between like Stranger Things or Lore. I know Lore's like limited.
Yeah.
But I love that like real world stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to go with Lore. Because it's something I wasn't expecting. I think, too, just to know that the guy went from doing a podcast to that makes me really interested in it.
Gives hope.
Yeah, it gives hope. And it's always nice to see somebody get something out of something. You know, like, oh, I started doing this and it picked up. And I just love nothing to me, like, made up stuff can never be creepier than real world stuff. I can't talk. Real stuff.
world.
Because, like, you know, you make all this stuff up, but then when you see where things really come from and just like how goofy people can be sometimes, especially when they tackle stories in the 1800s, 1700s, and you see like people really believe
One, too,
this.
like elements of like if you were to open up a coffin and see that the body was bleeding or something,
and not understand why.
it could be very easy to understand that without having any understanding of science. Somebody could think, oh, it like drank blood or something like that.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, that show is interesting. Like you can watch one episode of it, know if you're going to be into the rest of it.
Yeah. If you're not really into real world weird stuff, I don't know if
It
that's
just reminded me
your
of
shtick.
like a better done version of the shows that used to be on History Channel.
Yeah, which
and
I love
stuff.
those shows as bad as they are. Like I'll watch the marathons whenever they're on. You know?
Yeah, so I mean that show is worth checking out, but like I said, it kind of sucks. Like, so Derek, you hadn't watched all of Twin Peaks, like, because to me, like Stranger Things season 2 was nostalgic. It was fun. I burned like when it came out. Julie and I burned through it pretty much in a weekend.
I still don't think it's as good as it's not as good as the first season.
Well, too, though, on a show where you know there's multiple seasons to come, how an individual season stacks up after the first one is kind of hard to judge until you've seen the body of work.
Yeah.
Because the first season establishes the universe and the characters and makes you get interested in the premise. And then the later seasons, you know, build on it and build things out and may retroactively seem better or worse depending on how certain storylines pay off eventually. And some shows start off with like a promising but flawed first season and get better in the second and third season.
like BoJack.
But Stranger Things, I thought the first season was really strong. The second season, so essentially there's 8 episodes that are all really good and interesting, and one that
I don't really buy into that. I liked all of them.
so the one episode, so without even spoiling what it
X-Men
is,
episode,
the
pretty
one
much.
episode does feel like one of the one-off, like it feels like a one-off episode from the X-Men animated series from the 90s where Jubilee goes off and finds some teens that are like knockoff punks.
To me, that feels like that was their attempt to like maybe we can plant the seed for a spinoff.
Well, I mean, I think that's what they're doing is they're building, they're putting some seeds in there that'll grow into trees.
Yeah, that's what that was. That was their attempt at. But this isn't the 4-Year-Old Virgin.
Yes,
So
they're just laying some groundwork for future seasons to expand the
that's what
universe
this is.
out.
Or a spinoff.
So I think it's just the only thing about it was it's the same thing that The Walking Dead does though, where you have kind of a climactic cliffhanger. And then you abandon that to do a story that's kind of disconnected and shows other things happening. So it delays finding out. But here's the thing, though. On Stranger Things, where it's all the episodes are available at once, and you literally watch the next episode right after it and get the story beats you wanted, it's not as big of a deal as if it's week-to-week television or if it's a mid-season break and it takes you weeks or months to find out what happened.
Let's just be honest, though. If that is any TV show's weakest episode... Their weakest episode is a lot of TV shows' strongest episode. So it's like you're knocking it, and it's like,
well, I'm not giving it
no. I'm not saying you're knocking. I'm saying, but like, if most shows would aspire that to be their worst episode, you know.
Well, yeah, like Black Mirror is an anthology show about technology, and it's not. There are some horror themes in it, but it's also just about technology and the negative aspects of it. And some of the episodes are hit or miss. But the new season, Black Mirror season 4, had 6 episodes. So it had 2 really good episodes, 2 pretty good episodes, and 2 really bad episodes. And one of the really bad episodes, in my opinion, was the one directed by Jodie Foster. Yeah. So bringing, like people from that, like somebody that has her clout and, been involved in the movies and stuff she has, made an episode that really didn't land for me. And there's another one just kind of felt too over the top. And there's one that was kind of about the corrosive fandom of different properties, and kind of I don't want to really spoil it. That was interesting.
I don't want to watch it.
Then there was an episode there was like David Slade, so directed 30 Days a Night, some different episodes of the Hannibal show,
which you love.
He had directed an episode in this season that was very effective. Just didn't really build out enough of the world. Like all the stuff was very well done and interesting and, visceral. Just there really wasn't enough world building there to make it super interesting. Then there's one episode that in and of itself was almost like an anthology film because it had multiple plot lines that I found really good. And there's an episode called Hang the DJ that was about dating apps that was very good. So that's a show that I would recommend. You can just check out individual episodes from the show. Because there's like prior seasons, there were episodes that were really good. Like San Junipero is one that's gotten a lot of praise. And then there's a Black Christmas was an episode, or White Christmas, sorry, that had John Hamm in it. But like nobody else watched that show. So, and I would need to kind of ruminate on it a little bit more. But I think what it comes down to is, really, since the only show that all of us watched from beginning to end was Stranger Things season 2, does the poppy fun elements of that merit? Because Twin Peaks: The Return was very bold and did a lot of things, but it's not for everybody.
No,
but because it's not for everybody doesn't mean it's not. I will not watch it. Doesn't mean it's not the best.
I mean, that's my vote on that. Like, I think it was exciting in ways that, Stranger Things 2 was not exciting, especially it being a continuation of last year's, kind of going down the same path. Like, Twin Peaks was, I think, just a phenomenal achievement all the way around. It really did feel like an 18-hour movie. I know some people put it on their list as like best films of the year.
Yeah.
I don't, it was released in television on a weekly basis. Like, I'm going to consider it a TV show. But for me, I just think it was like an enormous achievement. And yeah, for me, that's my vote.
I mean, I like similarly, like I say Twin Peaks as well.
So what do we think, Derek, before you run out?
It is be Stranger Things.
So Derek says Stranger Things. We say, so like Twin Peaks: The Return. It's just one of those things where you can hear Derek coughing. You can't really watch that without having seen the original.
No, and the film.
You have to have seen season 1, 2, and the movie Firewalk with Me really. And then it's also, I think that the experience is a little bit improved by having read The Secret History of Twin Peaks. But, I mean, you don't have to. And then the final dossier, I think, is closer to required reading because it kind of wraps up stuff from the show. But, like, Twin Peaks: The Return did a lot of daring things and did a lot of things that were very out there. Like, the episode 8 just covered a lot of ground that I didn't expect to see covered in a TV show.
And the way it was covered and just the presentation, like, it just... So many, every episode, there were so many things that came out of, left field as far as your expectations go, especially being a continuation of something that was already established to a certain degree. And it was the same creators, but you also knew that David Lynch maybe wasn't going to give you something that was so straightforward.
Yeah.
I don't think we expected it to be this
opaque.
Yeah. So,
well, and two, like, the show was purposefully challenging at times and anti-expectations. So when you're really wanting to see, like, the next bit of plot development in this one, like, the one storyline, you're just waiting to see plot development, and he literally gives you a guy sweeping the floor at the Roadhouse bar for 3 minutes. And
beautiful.
So it just played through expectations to such a great degree. There was a lot of bold filmmaking going on, a lot of really interesting moments, a lot of great set pieces. Like, there's an arm wrestling scene that's amazing. There's an assassin that's really interesting.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of stuff throughout. The in and of itself, like, if it was just one element of some other movie, would get a lot of praise.
Would be memorable moments.
There's all these elements, but it's absolutely a show that's not for everybody. And even people who like Twin Peaks. So the audience is people who like Twin Peaks, but have watched all of it. And then beyond that, if people really hated Firewalk with Me, if you really hate Firewalk with Me and you really only want the more straightforward elements of the first 2 seasons of the show, I could see people having a hard time getting into it because on the reviews on IMDb and different websites, there were a lot of people who was like, oh, I like the first 2 seasons. This is trash. And I think it's just because expectations. People want more of that standard narrative with the out there elements just on the fringes every now and then.
Is it
and
because people are more comfortable with that?
Well, I think that people are more comfortable with the original series and standard storytelling, and they wanted just like the Red Room kind of interesting stuff every once in a while. But then the new season was mostly that type of stuff, with the story beats being the elements of the show
I feel like we need to reward the risk taken with this series and the fact that it paid off in spades, I think. Because personally, I don't know. I just think it's phenomenal. And also, too, it's been a cornerstone of our site for not that matters at all, but it has spawned so many discussions between us, like Stranger Things. It's a fun little popcorn thing you watch and there's not much to discuss.
so
I think it is more in line with a true piece of art in that there are so many different things to explore with this TV show.
But what I like too, and this is why I want to I can't talk. The reason why I wanted to watch season 3 of that is because sometimes I like when big properties can still be better than, like, when you have a big property that can out art the small stuff, or small stuff is supposed to be where art happens. But you take a big name director,
risk,
you take a big name, and you actually go for something, and you do it better than the small guys that are supposed to be able to do that. And granted, you have better resources and whatever, but still, it's nice to see things that take risks sometimes, because it seems like to me it'd be so easy just to go back and give people exactly what they wanted. And sometimes you don't know what you want till you get it.
Or they approximate with how people want it.
But sometimes I like when they say, you know what, this is what I want. I am the visual leader of this. You're going to see what I want, not what you want.
Like David Lynch at 70 years old, directing 18 hours of content. Because most directors that like Ridley Scott pumps stuff out constantly, and he's getting up there in age. But like for David Lynch to do 18 hours of content, like that's kind of unfathomable for me to sit here and think about like how much work went into that.
And the logistics of keeping everything straight. Like for me, it's my favorite thing of the year. Overall, but I think we should. So
it's bold and daring. At the same time, I could definitely see people can't connect at all.
Yeah.
But I think to me, it was the best thing in TV this year, just because it took them. It was taking risk that it didn't have to take, and doing things that narratively Like there were moments in one episode, the episode 8, that were like fit right into a horror film perfectly.
Yeah.
And still be incredibly effective. So to me, that just gets it. Stranger Things season 2 is fun.
But
Twin Peaks Return is gonna be
So I
talked
take
about
it you're
for years.
you're okay with this concession, right, Derek? Because there was nothing you were like, oh no, this is absolutely
No, because like I love
lore a lot.
Yeah,
and
I
you
like
Stranger
lore. I
Things
love
too.
Stranger Things, but with Stranger Things, to me, it's like as good as it is. Season 2 specifically, not necessarily season 1, didn't leave you with like a bunch of like thoughts. You know, like 'cause season 1.
Well, like we thought about doing videos. So for the Twin Peaks, we did videos where we discussed each episode and did like theorizing for the upcoming episodes.
It's hard to do
On
that.
Stranger
for
Things, we didn't really
Stranger
see
Things.
like one. It's all dropped at once, so nobody's really wanting to break down what happened in an individual episode. They just watch the next one, and so we didn't really see a point to do that. But the Twin Peaks was more of a thing. I think people will be talking about years from now. Versus like Stranger Things will be a new season that comes
They're just
out.
waiting for the next season. We're gonna
Yeah.
watch that and then wait for the next
Yeah,
one.
and there's
then be done with
nothing
it.
wrong
yeah.
with it.
No, not at all.
And I
TV.
love it. Like it's one of my favorite
Yeah.
TV shows probably ever because I'm not a big TV guy, but it's just one of those things where it's like it's really good, but at the end of the day, like I don't really because I watched it a lot when it first came out, but you don't. I feel like the way y'all have described Twin Peaks is like all three of us could watch the same episode and all three come out feeling different.
Yes, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I like stuff like that.
It's very interesting, you know.
Whereas Stranger Things, as great as it is, like this is what it is.
Everybody's like basically looking at that show through the same lens and they're getting the same exact thing out of
Well,
it.
and it didn't leave me with any desire or thoughts about that universe. Like I didn't sit there and think about it.
or me to rewatch it. Yeah,
And
you know, I
two-
might when the new season comes out.
I'll
but,
rewatch
yeah.
season 2 a lot.
Like
but
Twin Peaks Return made me want to make a short film that was inspired by it versus Twin Peaks. I'm like, or not Twin Peaks, Stranger Things. I'm like, oh, that was fun. I really enjoyed it. I went to the bar in Chicago that was Stranger Things themed. Really fun.
Stranger
something I
Things
enjoy.
is something that's created for the masses. Whereas I think that from what you described of the episode or season 3 of Twin Peaks is something that's a little bit more refined. You know, if that's
it's definitely it's again like you talked about. You know, I don't know if we were talking off camera, but Ryan Johnson. That was Ryan Johnson's Star Wars. This is David Lynch and Mark Frost's Twin Peaks.
Which is
like
refreshing
it's not
sometimes.
just. It's what they want to make at this point in their life, and which is vastly different than what they made, 30 years ago, which has shown that they have grown as artists and, as creators.
Yeah.
And it's refreshing that they're not just trying to shoehorn the style of this 90s show into 2017 and somehow make it work like a Fuller House or something like that. You know what I mean?
which
Like,
is and again, there's nothing
they
wrong
could have
with
done that and people still would have watched it.
It's just nice sometimes to say, look, this is my show. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
If you're gonna, I like that.
Yeah.
Yep. So for our favorite television show of the year, it goes to Twin Peaks: The Return. So now it's time to go through the options for the House by the Video Store favorite horror movie of the year. So a number of things in this we've already talked about in different sections on earlier on the last episode. So the things we're including, so we have Get Out, the Jordan Peele movie that made a ton of money. It was also a ton of movie. Split, the M. Night Shyamalan film. It, which came out this past summer. Something we did on a podcast episode on a while back, Better Watch Out. Even though it was made and shown in like 2016, it didn't get released until 2017. So that's why we included that. So that's kind of the Christmas themed movie, Better Watch Out. Raw, which was a indie film that was was in French, and it was like a big festival hit and premiered like at Cannes and was showed a bunch of places and is available to watch on Netflix now. We did an episode on that a while back. It Comes at Night, which was the A24 movie that had Joel Edgerton in it and caused a little bit of controversy back when it came out. The Killing of a Sacred Deer, which had Colin Farrell and Nicole Kidman in it and was also kind of a polarizing movie. Then Gerald Game, which was the Netflix movie that we talked about a little bit, 1922, which was a Stephen King adaptation as well that was on Netflix that had Thomas Jane in it. I know, Sean, you were a big fan of the movie Killing Ground, which was on Netflix, and I watched that as well. And then we kind of try to think, like, what else did we see this year that would qualify for this? Annabelle Creation was one that we saw back in the summer. That was a big hit.
Should we have put that on biggest surprise? Because I think it's probably not our favorite film, but I wasn't super hot on it.
Yeah.
But a lot of people really liked that film.
I think it's just a surprise that it didn't suck. I think that's kind of... And it got good reviews, but...
So I think the thing that like that movie showed, like Annabelle Creation, is like, so the director David F. Sandberg, give him better material, and I'm excited to see what he does. Because Lights Out, like the adaptation that he directed of like the short film he made, like it was written by somebody else. Like that was a movie where it was all effectively done. And Annabelle Creation had very effectively done set pieces and sequences. So he's very good at, actually directing the hell out of what's written. It's just I don't think he's been given great material so far, or at least material that didn't connect with me in any way.
Yeah.
But like the fact that movie, like Annabelle Creation, Ouija, Origin of Evil, like the fact that these sequels for these kind of uninspired cash grab spinoffs or sequels or product, Ouija is just, Ouija boards. The fact that these movies, like they had a first entry, like the first Annabelle wasn't very well reviewed, the first Ouija wasn't well reviewed, and then they actually got interesting filmmakers for the sequels, and then those sequels are vastly superior to the originals in every single way. Was interesting. And then David F. Sandberg is just somebody to watch out for, and he's supposed to be directing Shazam for Warner Brothers and DC, which getting out of the horror world a little bit.
Yeah. So I mean, we can knock that one off the list, but
worth
Derek
mentioning.
Derek mentioned that before the podcast. Give that a little bit of props that that turned out better than expected.
Yeah, it turned out it could. Yeah, it just kind of like what I saw. It's not nowhere near as good as Insidious 3,
and then we can knock off Killing Ground because I mean William didn't like it.
Yeah,
that is an Australian kind of thriller, but for me the thing I loved about it was that I don't want to spoil hardly anything about it. It's on Netflix. You can go watch it. It's pretty intense at times. I cared enough about what was going on to want to know where the story was going, and it was told in a I'll just say not a straightforward fashion, which I really appreciated. And at first was a little confused. I mean, I was watching my daughter and I was like, wait, did I miss something? Because it starts cross-cutting between some things. And I really liked that element, and it kind of kept me intrigued. It built a little mystery, and maybe you knew where things were going, or you thought you did. But at the same time, the way it revealed information, I just thought that film built really well for me, and it kept me really engaged. And it was a pretty damn brutal film. Like if you're looking for like a horror film that that kind of goes for it, I think this is definitely one of those. It's also like the two of the leads. I kind of like how that relationship developed unexpectedly a little bit, and what came out of that by the end of the film.
Yeah.
So I was a big fan of that. And again, as we mentioned on the previous podcast, it is the context in which you watched it. I was looking through some other people's best of year list, and I saw this one on a couple of them. So to be able to just watch this for free at home on Netflix, like that probably heightened. And also I'd watched some other films in the middle of this. So there were some that I liked okay, some I didn't like as much, but this one like stood out for me, and I definitely think it's one people should check out if you have Netflix. Absolutely go watch it. It may not be all the way for you. William wasn't too hot on it, but for me, it was a little refreshing in some regards, even if it does do maybe some familiar things, but it just, I appreciated the approach to this film. And I also have like a soft spot for Australian horror films and thrillers. Hounds of Love was another one that I watched as well. I think that was on Hulu. I liked Killing Ground more. Hounds of Love, that was about a girl who gets abducted, kind of a similar, thing we've seen before, and taken to a house and chained up to a bed. But with that one, it is kind of about her captors and their relationship, and she kind of starts. They have relationship problems. Like I'm assuming two people who would kidnap somebody would maybe be a little unstable themselves,
Yeah.
So she begins starting to kind of manipulate them on some regards.
Kind of like Reverse of the Ref, the Dennis Leary movie.
I did not see that, but I kind of know. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Set during Christmas stuff. Yeah. So I recommend Hounds of Love on Hulu as well too. I think that was well done. And Super Dark Times I mentioned on the previous podcast, that was good as well. I don't know if it was like the perfect ending to that film, but also enjoyed that. So I just want to give props to a couple of those.
Yeah, and then there's some stuff too. Like I'd read other people's list, and some people are including The Black Coat's Daughter, which is on Amazon Prime, I believe. Originally, it's called February when it was first shown at festivals.
So is that free to watch on Prime? Or
Yes.
Oh, okay. I would have watched it. For some reason, I thought it was to rent on there.
Yeah, I watched it for free, and that was from Osgood Perkins, who also directed I'm the Pretty Little Thing That Lives in the House, which I wasn't really a big fan of because that was like a really slow burn movie where...
Well, a question: is this movie even in contention for anything?
No, I was just mentioning it.
Well, just give us a brief kind of like your impressions of it, because this was on other people's lists. At least we can kind of give context, because if you are reading other best of lists, this is one that kept popping up.
So one, it just wasn't really my type of movie. Because telling you what exactly it is kind of spoils it a little bit.
Yeah.
It's just you see like, you have two kind of main characters that you see, and then you eventually see what the relationship is between those stories. And like one of the characters is what's her name? Emma Roberts, who I don't like in a lot of stuff because she just kind of plays like the uptight, bitchy alpha female, like popular girl, or at least on like what was the show? Scream Queens, and then like American Horror Story, and then like she's a little bit different in the Scream 4. Then also has Kiernan Shipka, who was in Mad Men, is Sally Draper, like Dawn's daughter. She in that show she was really great, and in this movie she's good too. And it's got James Remar, who's been in a bunch of stuff like the Warriors, then Dexter, and all kinds of stuff. So it's got a good cast, and it has interesting visuals. It's just the type of story that it was really didn't connect to me, and I didn't really get that invested in any of it. And then, like, once you kind of see everything snap into place and see exactly what happened, you're like, oh.
Can you see how some people put this on their list, or is that baffling? Is it one of those films?
No, it's not really baffling.
Yeah.
It's just, I think, too, part of it is the festival effect of where people saw this at festivals where they built a schedule, and then that came at the perfect, like, you can schedule movies together where it increases or lessens the impact. Because if you just throw a bunch of random stuff together, it can make people like, oh, this is terrible, I hate it. But if you put movies together that maybe thematically flow together, maybe like seeing something before it and having things set up for you in a certain way can maybe change the impact. And two, at festivals, people just come away loving stuff because you're in the audience, you see people there who are in the movie or the creators or whatever. Because like I've been at screenings of stuff where people involved with it are there, or there's like an atmosphere around it that makes me really enjoy it more than when I watch it later. So I think maybe there's some of that going on with it. Yeah. It's not my type of movie.
And it's on Prime, though, so people can check that out. I also watched real quick A Dark Song, because that was also on some list. It's about a woman who is using some sort of ritual. I don't necessarily say satanic, but it's some sort of ritual with a guy as her kind of guide on that. It was okay, but parts of it were very slow. That also hit a bunch of best of lists, or some of those. It's on Netflix to watch. You can watch it. Don't go with super high expectations, and you may come out enjoying it. But I have just watched a lot of good films this week as well, and that did not rise to the top of my list.
When you watch a bunch of stuff together, it can make it all kind of bleed together. But so going back to the things on the list that we actually need to hash out and discuss, because I think there's like the overall number of movies that are really in contention for it kind of gets narrowed down a little bit. Because better watch out. Like Derek, you didn't see that.
That's one of my top 5, I think.
And like Gerald's Game in 1922 was good, but I don't think it's the best of the year.
No,
it could land in a top 10 list. And somebody had Gerald's Game in their top 10, that I could see that too. Like Killing of the Sacred Deer.
How did you land on that? I really enjoyed it, but I also like the director's previous stuff. Like I love The Lobster and Dogtooth. I loved that film.
So it's one of those movies where you just have to completely ignore why things are happening.
Exactly.
And just understand that they are happening.
Yes. Yeah.
Like not even spoiling the movie. Just like if somebody comes up and says,
this is what's going to happen next.
That person's going to die in 3 days if you don't brush your teeth.
And it's about kind of the situations and stuff more so than any logical plot things. But it just, I don't know. Again, I like his sensibilities at directors. It felt, if there was like a Kubrick award this year, like this feels more like a Kubrick film as far as the framing, some of the sound design. I think it's shot beautifully well. I love the editing, the pacing. The young boy in it, I think, plays in this film phenomenally. I was looking forward to this film, and then it has like a 70-something% on Rotten Tomatoes. So I thought, okay, I'll temper my expectations. I may end up not liking it all. I don't know, but for me, I think I like this even more than The Lobster. It's not a thrill-a-minute horror. This isn't It or anything like that at all. Like it's almost hard. This was on some best lists, but it's almost, I could see people not including this as a horror film, but I don't know what you call it. Like it's not quite a drama either, because it is just some elements are so out there.
I've seen people say like it's a black dark comedy. Like, you can kind of see that.
Yeah, like there's definitely a lot of humor behind some of this stuff, and Colin Farrell's performance, I think it's just like almost understated and a bit quirky as far as everybody's kind of. It feels a little off and like it takes place in another universe almost, but it was shot in Cincinnati though. Yeah, mostly. Yeah, and a local TV anchor was in there as well.
Yeah, because I can see a lot of they're walking by the riverfront. It's like, oh, I know where that's at.
Barry Burnson, who used to be on WDRB, he has a role in the film. My dad had told me about that before it came out, but for me, that lands on my top 3 list. But yeah, that's definitely your mileage may vary as well.
Yeah, I thought it was well done, and there were good elements to it, but it just kind of it never really got me super invested in what was happening. Yeah. And then, the feeling that it leaves you with is kind of somber and things like that.
Yeah, it's definitely a film. Just sit back, let it wash over you, and keep your expectations at the door and don't expect certain logic things to work out, because that's really not what it's about.
And then, let's see. So It Comes at Night was a very divisive movie. So, Derek, did you see that?
I had no interest.
So that was one where I think the marketing really hurt its perception, where, it has a good critical review on Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb, or not IMDb, just like, I think it has a good like Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes score, but then a really bad audience score, because people went in expecting something different based on what the trailer sold it as. And if you go in thinking it's more of like a kind of action-packed creature feature, or at least you think that you're going to get one thing, and then when it's much more of just a study about characters and interactions and like this world, and it's more of like a somber reflective movie, that really can cause people to have a negative reaction.
Again, when you watch trailers, leave your expectations at the door, because they can be cut a million different ways. It's unfortunate, but
I did not watch the trailer.
With the way the trailers were done and the name of the movie also indicated that something,
when you find out what the
poor. After I find out what the movie is about, because I went ahead and that was one of those movies, I'll go read spoilers. And I went and read a movie reviewers. I think they write for, I can't remember. It's one I always follow. They write for Vandy or something.
Vanity Fair.
Yeah. But anyway, I trust them pretty well. And I just can't remember the name. Anyway, after I went and read what it was, I was like, I have no interest in watching.
Well, and two, it's the type of film where, if you read what the plot is, there's different films. You read what the plot is and you're like, okay, the plot's this. But for me, the reason I liked it so much is the way it was presented, and some of the I remember one specific scene that I think is phenomenal, that ratchets up the tension. Like there is kind of a unsettling feeling throughout the entire film, because there's uncertainty about the entire situation, and you don't know if somebody's going to turn on somebody, kind of in a Night of the Living Dead situation, because people are in desperate times. I really enjoy, and again, I saw this in theater. It might have painted my picture a little bit different. I know William did too, but I really super enjoyed that film. I thought it was going to make one of my top 5 this year, and it only got knocked down because there are some films I maybe enjoyed more. Yeah. But I really, really enjoyed this movie, and I would like to revisit it again. But this is a film if I'm in the mood for it, because it is a slower film, and I have to be like kind of in the mood for that experience. It's not one that you can pop on and have a good old time watching, really, for sure.
That's where you look at something like It, and the one thing I do like about It is it was kind of like the blockbuster horror film of the year, really. I mean, there was so much hype for it, and at one point in time, it had the most viewed trailer on YouTube. That's probably been broken since.
I think Avengers Infinity War.
Yeah, that changes like every other week now, but there's so much in that movie, like we said, that maybe could have went wrong with it. But the nice thing is that movie does get a fall back on the fact that it's a Stephen King book. And with Stephen King, there's always so much depth to a lot of the stuff that he writes. And I think the reason why It, to me, is probably one of the more effective films, it tackles like apparent like sexual abuse, racism, bullies, and there's so many things in the film that are actually scarier or more real than It creature itself. Like while it is terrifying, whatever Pennywise, the stuff that's going on in the real world that the town's overlooking is actually the scarier
and two,
stuff.
the stuff that the kids are actually scared of is what the creature Pennywise kind of used to come after them.
I appreciated that effect. Like I think it's a smart way to double up on some of the things the film is about, but at the same time, it was very much in a fun house type fashion, and I feel like they didn't really ruminate on any of those at once because it was trying to do a lot. I mean, there was a lot of characters to pack in.
Yeah.
It was a long film, but it didn't overstay its welcome in my opinion.
No,
like,
it didn't.
I didn't even get to see this in theater, so I imagine enjoying it even more in theaters.
Yeah.
We had tickets for it, and then that's the day my daughter was born.
Yeah,
so I just saw it like recently whenever it hit VOD.
Well, and two, like with that movie, kind of going out of order, like with it, like that movie was a roller coaster ride in the theater. Because it wasn't just it was over 2 hours, but it wasn't initial scare. And
30 minutes of exposition or something.
Yeah, because what happens is you have like an initial scare. You have, resetting the board and getting the characters you're going to follow. And then you get like, however long into it. And there's like a little bit of like jump scares. Or just jump scares peppered throughout until you get to the third act, like an hour later. Yeah. And then you have like your set piece. Like this movie had consistently things throughout.
Yeah.
They kept the pacing up and very effectively done sequences. The only negative I really have on it is that most of the characters really didn't feel to be in danger.
No, but the only reason why is because there is no way to spoil this movie.
It's
this movie is
based on a book.
I mean,
I had a TV series.
I had never read the book and never seen the TV series.
But like going into this,
so basically,
there's going to be a sequel. With
the other big thing to recommend to people coming out of that, like if you still haven't seen it yet and you want to see it and you haven't watched the original 90s series, do not watch the 90s series first. Because I think if you watch the original 90s series, because somebody, I forget who was a follow on Facebook or Twitter or something, had said that they watched the original series and then went and watched the new one and said, well, that was stupid because I just ruined every single thing from the movie because...
But they're so different.
But they're so different, but the major plot points are still the same.
There.
So watching an older 90s version that was like a made-for-TV movie in multiple parts and then going and watch the full-length movie version... I think could be detrimental because when you go to the movie, nothing is really surprising.
I still think one thing
for the average viewer.
Yeah, but one thing I enjoyed about this because I knew everything going on in this movie. I'd watched it several times as a kid. I've read the book. I knew everything that was going to happen. It still was scary. There's still moments in it really tense.
Well, too, the big thing is that you like the kids.
Yeah, you do like the kids, but one thing we always talk about this in a lot of movies is like, how do you do your scares? Every single scare in this movie, there wasn't any like bullshit scares.
Well,
there wasn't no cats.
There weren't cats jumping out.
Everything was with Pennywise or something else was actually scaring you. It wasn't,
There wasn't the patented person in the bathroom with the medicine cabinet open. They shut the window and there's something in the background and it screeches.
I mean, there is a bathroom scene, but it's
clowns are so cliche now, and they managed to make it work. Yeah, they managed to make it work and not feel trite or anything like that.
Well, the clowns got to be cliched because there was like a few years ago there was a sightings of the clowns at nighttime, and then it got to be a much bigger thing where it was seen more around the country.
Stephen King attributed that to part of this film's success.
Yeah,
and he said that in Stranger Things,
and that set the groundwork for people to be interested in clowns as a scary thing again. Not that it ever really went away. And then Stranger Things kind of primed everybody for the
80s.
The 80s-ness and the kids banding together, the kind of Amblin 80s Spielbergian Stephen King-esque, group of kids doing something. So, it was very effective in that. And then just some other movies just before we go and kind of get down to the nitty-gritty on this. So Raw was one that was on Netflix. We have an entire episode where we discussed it if you want more.
I didn't even remember discussing that whole episode. So yeah, you can go back and listen to that. Honestly though, for me now, like I'm trying to think what I loved about that film so much. I can't exactly put my finger on it right now. It's been a while since I watched it.
Yeah.
But for me overall, it did feel like it was from a certain perspective, and I felt like I was, even though it was disconnected from reality, I feel like there was enough personality in that film and personal touches that I felt like I was, a part of somebody's perspective and not just watching a plot unfold. And again, that's one too where you kind of just got to let some things happen almost. And I did enjoy some of the absurdity about the film. And it's just like an odd slant on a coming of age film almost, and kind of blossoming in college.
And it's too a movie I think got the festival effect. People said like, oh, people were puking in the aisles. We'll see. It's like, no, you weren't.
The only time everyone came close to puking in the
I'll
aisle
have
was
to
during
say this
Jackass
though.
3.
There's the film is about cannibalism. The scene that pops up in the film that is about that, I think because of the context of the movie, when it comes up, it is way more powerful than something like Cannibal Holocaust. Not Cannibal Holocaust. What the hell is that film?
Green Inferno.
Yeah. And even I think Nicole was like, "Oh, this is really gross." And we watch all kinds of films.
Yeah.
And maybe it didn't work for you or some people, but honestly, for me, I see why some people, if they weren't used to watching that type of stuff on one hand, and then maybe we're just kind of invested in the story, and then that kind of pops up, and just the situation that happens in, I think it is very effective, and I didn't expect it to affect me that way. So just my perspective on that.
Yeah, but I mean, I think too, it's also female director and writer. So it's nice to see new voices and not to be the same old story. It's just I feel like it was kind of based on the festival reactions. You think it's like one of the most amazing films ever made, and then at the end of the day, I think it was just an effective enough take on coming of age story told through a different lens.
Yeah, and that's what you're getting, kind of a coming age story. Don't expect to get a horror thriller or something like that. A cannibalistic horror thriller. It's not that at all.
Let's see, something else like The Shape of Water was one that I was the only one that saw the new Guillermo del Toro movie. So I enjoyed it. It wasn't. I don't think it's better than Pan's Labyrinth.
Do you think Pan's Labyrinth is his best film?
Yes. Yeah, I think Pan's Labyrinth is best. And there's other movies I enjoy, like Blade 2. And Crimson Peak I enjoy, because Julie saw this with me, and she had seen Crimson Peak and Pan's Labyrinth as well. So we were discussing like how they ranked, and she said for her it was Pan's Labyrinth, Shape of Water, then Crimson Peak. Just like there was a few things with The Shape of Water I didn't expect it to do that it did. Like a fair deal of nudity, like right on when it starts. I was like, I really wasn't expecting that. Just some of the negative things about it, like a beautiful looking movie. Everybody does great performances. It's just Michael Shannon's kind of like the government agent who, is in effect the bad guy. And he's just written so black, like it's so black and white. Like he's written as such a negative character with no shades of gray to it or no real...
like you can't understand the reason for his motives sometimes, maybe, because sometimes a personal... a villain will have motives that you kind of understand where they're coming at, so it has none of that. Basically,
it doesn't really have any gradation to him that makes you kind of understand what he's or makes you like agree with his viewpoint. It's mostly just he's a company man who wants to do what he's told.
Company man.
And then there's this other element. So like that was like the weak element. His performance doing what he was asked to do was great. Yeah, it's just the actual as written there really wasn't enough there. It was a beautiful movie and looked great, and it was enjoyable. It was kind of fairy tale-esque, kind of reminiscent of like The Cure for Wellness in terms of like the visuals, the visual palette, like, having kind of tile stuff and water and all that. The music kind of felt like something out of Ratatouille or like a Pixar short. So that was a little bit...
You feel like a French, like a French
lighter
film.
French movies from like an earlier era. So didn't really connect to me on that level, but I mean, I guess it worked for what he was going for. So ultimately, a movie I'd recommend people watch if they like other Del Toro things. Beautiful movie to watch. So I recommend seeing it in the theaters. It's just, to me, it didn't exceed Pan's Labyrinth or really connect more than that movie. So like it wouldn't really end up in my top like movie of the year, but just something that's out there.
Yeah.
So now I guess so there's also Split, which we discussed earlier, and one of our biggest surprise.
Get back into that.
So I guess the big discussion comes down to, because I think most horror...
We've already given props to Better Watch Out, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
I think that was really great and an awesome surprise as well.
Yeah, so kind of the big discussion is, because most horror top 10 lists, it's like, okay, I've seen some where they put like Gerald's Game at number 1 or something, but usually it's either the top 1 and 2 in some order is Get Out and It.
Yeah.
So the big discussion is which goes in 1, which goes in 2.
Here's my thing. Get Out is a better movie than It. Like, overall, from start to finish, it is a better movie. With that being said, I do not think it is a better horror movie. If I had to sit down in a vacuum and just say which one would I rather, I'm going with It all day. It's got scares in it. It's not in the same level as, because I don't think that Get Out has traditional scares. It does, but it's not like it. It has a bunch of effective, creepy scenes. The guy that played Pennywise, Bill Skarsgård, is great. He really made
Yeah,
it.
like somebody that people were really upset about going into it, about his, or very skeptical of his casting, and he played the part perfectly.
Yeah, I don't know if you could get a better Pennywise. I mean,
because Tim Curry, he did
was
what he
good,
did,
but he did what
and he didn't do anything like that. They went and did a different direction, which I think was the wisest thing they could have done.
and to me, it has
Ledger situation, right?
Yeah, it has to be. To me, it has to be It. That to me is the best.
So
horror
what's
movie.
the third one though? We kind of briefly try to figure this out before because Derek hasn't seen a lot of these that William and I have, and even William and I are split on some of them. So no pun intended, but is it split? Maybe just that.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of it's like things, it's kind of hard to kind of do like.
Do we just want to do one runner up then? Because.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just one runner up.
Okay, yeah.
Because
there's no
when you
clear
get
number
beyond
3.
that, because to me, like there are like obviously other people's lists have had different orderings, but to me, like when it came down to the best quote unquote horror movie of the year, the discussion is really not just because of the box office returns either, but just in terms of the social impact and just watching the movies. Like Get Out actually had me excited going into the end of the movie. And after you've watched a bunch of stuff for this podcast, and once you've, not that we worked on Hollywood movies, just working on short films and other people's projects alone, it does change the way you view movies some. Because I've heard people who are like actors or directors who say like after they really got hardcore into acting and directing, they can never really watch movies the same way because you just kind of have like, you're watching it and you're seeing more of a product and thinking about what went into it versus seeing a story. And that is true to some extent when you see a bunch of movies that sometimes it's hard to get visceral reactions out of things. But Get Out did have me like, my palms sweating going into the last part of it when, the kind of the third act stuff kicks off. And I was genuinely concerned for like the safety of a character. So that to me, like movies effectively pulling that off and making me actually get invested is a feat. So that to me had me invested in the movie. And then, it was a good horror film. But
for me, I talked to William, I don't know if it was the last podcast or what that you weren't on. Like, I think it is a great popcorn film. I see why it made a lot of money because it is great entertainment and it's pretty light on its issues. Yeah, there's child abuse, but it's pretty.
It's informing the characters. It's not what the movie's about.
It's pretty standardly handled. Like, okay, we've got this and we've got some racism here, but this isn't. It really does. It really glosses over all of that stuff, and that's okay. That's fine. It's I think it's a great like funhouse horror film. For me, I think Get Out is the more important film. It's one I enjoyed the most, and if somebody's looking for a good time and say, hey, watch It. For me, I feel like Get Out is the more important film that I would tell people, hey, you have to watch this film. This is a unique perspective. It's something, new in 2017, not a remake. And I'm not holding that against It or anything like that. If it would have maybe, again, tackled some of those things in certain ways that maybe think about it or look at it at a different light. You can always do that with remakes, even if something's being remade. Yeah. But and I hadn't seen it before, so even I'm coming in it as a fresh person. But I just think Get Out, like there's so many things to look at that film and rewatch it many times over for, and many things to kind of appreciate. And I think it just has like such a strong script and characters too. Like I like the characters in It. They were fun, but like the kid from Stranger Things, he wasn't always a home run for me on some of his humor and stuff. Like they were fine though, but and they were like the most likable group of kids. Stranger Things has those, but as far as in a film, since it feels like some of those like early 90s or 80s Amblin films. They did pull that off somehow. But for me personally, like I think just Get Out is the stronger film all the way around. But I totally get the appreciation for just the creativity too in it, and just like the funness of that film, because it is a really fun film that feels safe, and that's why I think it was so successful, because there was not really huge risk in there, with any of the characters. It was like a funhouse ride.
Well, and two, I mean, I agree with that too, because I think that to me, Get Out was like, so if somebody says it's the best horror film of the year, I don't have any problems with that, because to me it's like it's kind of 1A and 1B when you're thinking about.
To me, it is more of a true horror film. To me, is popcorn scares.
Well, there are people
stuff like that. Get Out has that, but again, like I think once you rewatch, like you don't get more. Like when you rewatch Get Out, which I haven't, I need to.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'll get any more out of the scares. I think you'll just get more of the social context. Like it's a deeper film. But with when you go back and you rewatch it, I think it still could be fun. Well, in the same way, like Resident Evil 7 is still fun to replay. There's not much social context there. But if I'm going to just want to have a good time, that's what I'm going for. It is why I go to watch these big horror movies. Get Out is more of a thinking man's horror movie, I think, whereas it is more of just like, if you're looking just to go and get lost in a horror film with really no weight on it, that's what you're looking for.
Well, and
that is what that's what the Friday 13th and the Nightmare on Elm Street remakes aspire to be, and they cannot.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate what it did, and the key thing it did that most movies these days fail to do, whether it be action or whatever, is it made you like the core group of kids or the core characters. I mean, big movies have a problem giving you likable, relatable characters. And I'm sure a lot of kids coming from different backgrounds could pick different kids out of the main cast to identify with more. And two, like Sean, like you said, like it doesn't really focus on any of the social issues. It just uses those to kind of color the experience of the characters.
It flushes everything,
and it kind of gives you more insight into why kids act the way they do. And I think that's good, and it fleshed those kids like out a little bit and made you understand more of what their actual fear was, like being related to these different things. So I think that all worked.
Yeah,
it was an effective movie. That's kind of a roller coaster ride, and just I guess part of it is it's a two-parter because they're making a sequel.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, how does that sequel turn out? Because that kind of shapes what the overall property feels like. I mean, it's a standalone thing. It's a movie that has a beginning and an end, and you never have to watch the next one.
Because if it too sucks, well, that doesn't retroactively make it.
No, it's just as an experience.
It can't.
Like I think too, to me, like Get Out being what's likely to be a one-shot movie where they don't come back to that universe.
Yeah, they do not.
Because like they've talked about sequels just because it made so much money, but I don't think Jordan Peele didn't have like a sequel script waiting there.
I think you tackle a different social issue.
And he wants to do more socially themed movies anyway.
From what I'm getting is that this is going to be more of like a 2-to-1. It looks like Get Out will be, which I have no issue with Get Out being. Like I said, I think it is the better movie.
And two, So 2018, or just say from now on, like what I think that's great to have of writing horror films, but what do you want to see more of the type of horror films? Do you see more films like Get Out or more films like It that are like great execution on things you've seen before?
I think I'd much rather have It.
Yeah.
The reason why I say it is Get Out socially is important, but do I know that movie can continue? Would I want to go rewatch that over and over and over again? No, because as a person who is more open-minded and tries to understand everybody's perspective, it's like I just want to go watch It. Sometimes it's just fun just to go and watch something like that where it's like I'm not getting beaten over the head with social issues, because that's kind of why you go to the movies sometimes is to watch it. Whereas like I could see where somebody might not like Get Out because of the social issues, which is whatever. But I think that, if I just had to go watch one of those movies, I'm going to take It. Like I said, Get Out is better, but It is what I would much rather watch.
I mean, I think, too, though, with Get Out, like one positive aspect is even though it has social issues in it, I think some people who would probably disagree with that social messaging
could still enjoy it.
Could probably watching it fly over their head that it is a message. They're just watching it as a movie.
Yeah.
And, so to me, like I said, I mean, it's kind of a 1A, 1B situation because it was still really well done and really effective. It was a win for horror that it happened because that's going to open a lot more people up.
It was a huge movie.
It was a huge
lot
movie.
Of money and,
Well, and two, I think, too, what that'll show, hopefully, studios is that if you get the right creative team and the right property and it's horror, you can spend, $30-40 million on it and be fine.
Yeah.
And because I think a lot of movies want to spend, like horror, there's kind of a cap on it. They don't want to spend more than a certain amount.
Yeah. But like I said, the people who are in control of the new Halloween coming out or, the Friday 13th remake, if they could have a half of the amount of success that it had, they would go for that all day, every single day. And they would be ecstatic.
So that would be, I would be happy with that film, but also, too, it wouldn't be one that I'd be revisiting a ton. I think it is worth revisiting because the characters are funny, you like them.
Yeah.
That's why it's worth coming back. For me, though, honestly, like I would think it would be great to see them tackle it in an unexpected way and do something where they bring in some social issues. And I'm not saying necessarily social issues, but
I
just
think,
like Last Jedi, flip things on its head. I want to see more horror films flip the expectations on your head of what you're going to get out of it.
You might see that in the second because having watched it, and know it, the second act or second half is the weakest. So I think in order to make that effective, you would have.
things
Well, I
up
think
a
they're
lot.
going to
Have
make
to.
more. They'll diverge more from the source
Yeah,
material.
you're going to have to because it's the weakest.
Well, and two,
part.
luckily in it, no spoiler alert, they avoided the group sex scene.
Well, they have to. They're not going to do
Because
that.
I don't think that really added too much to it to begin
that's
with.
weird, but-
So I think as right now, as we're saying is, so our winner is Get Out for the best horror film of the year, our favorite horror film of the year, and then the runner-up is It.
Because Get Out was one of the few movies I gave a 10 to. I don't know how many I did. It's not much, but I know I gave that perfect score. And it deserved it.
Because when people ask for well, not just horror aficionados, but general moviegoers ask me for my opinion on movies or ask for my recommendation. It and Get Out are both ones I could say yes without really any reservations. It's like, yep, go watch them. Some of these other movies do require caveats and parsing out who it's for, but yeah, both of those I really enjoy. But to me, just Get Out's the one I want to revisit, and that I would like to see more people do. Is tackle not necessarily vocalize social issues through movies.
It doesn't have to be social issues. It just has to be a script with some depth. You know what I mean? And something with that you can watch multiple times, I think, and pull out different things each time you watch it. And that's why that's why I like that film. I have watched it a couple times since then, and it's held up or even gotten even better. Rewatches. But yeah, so super enjoyed that film.
So it's Get Out, and then the runner-up is It.
Derek, did you want to talk about your overall best stuff, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to go with just my overall just one film of the year. For me, it's The Last Jedi. And I know that's not maybe necessarily a shocker because it's Star Wars, but I think the most, because I didn't get to talk about it because I wasn't on the last podcast, but I think the most impressive thing to me is you're talking about a franchise that is, 40 years old?
Yeah, it started in 1977.
It's been going on for a long time. The Force Awakens, which I really enjoyed, wasn't necessarily anything new. You got a movie that they gave to Rian Johnson, who tossed out the script that they had already kind of planned out for it, went his own way, did what he wanted, and put it wasn't a great Star Wars film. It was just a great film, which I think sometimes is more important, which is why I like Logan so much. Logan was not a great X-Men film, but it was a great movie. And I think the most important thing is you should put out great movies instead of just great genre.
That's how you make a great Star Wars film.
Yeah.
Make it not a Star Wars film. I'm just kidding.
No, you're right.
We've had Star Wars films already. You got to do something different.
Force Awakens
for me personally
was a great Star Wars film.
Yeah.
It was not a great film. It was a great Star Wars.
think
It was good. I like it. But
It reset the table for them to bring that franchise back, because I think if you jump straight into something that was
too different,
Last Jedi, then you're immediately turning people off because you're not giving them what they wanted. And so I think you kind of need to reset the table with a little bit of familiar elements to then allow new things to happen.
But to me,
and two, like today's climate with social media and stuff, people have such negative immediate reactions to everything.
well, it's because you have, and not to get in big show because I'm not, but you have fanboys and fan women that, and this is all this movie is about was, I'm not going to do any spoilers, but it's in the trailer if you've seen it, destroy the past, kill it if you have to. That's what this.
Yeah.
And these people, either one, you can't have it both ways. You can't you can't hate the Force Awakens because it's too much like Star Wars, and then hate the Last Jedi because it's too.
No, there
different.
were plenty of people who said the Force Awakens is too familiar to do something different, and then with this one, they're like, no.
So it's like, what do you want? You don't know what you want.
I was in the camp of didn't like Force Awakens, but loved this one because it was what I didn't even expect. You know what I mean? I didn't go into the Force Awakens thinking they better blow my mind. And, I was fine with them straight down the line, but it was too far straight down the line for me. So for this was like the other direction where I didn't expect them to go this far off the radar.
Yeah.
William, you know what your best film of the year is? As of now, the last day of 2017.
So, kind of doing a cop out is I still think like if I had to name like my favorite, I think it's Twin Peaks: The Return. That's my favorite thing of the year because like in terms of movies, there's a lot of stuff that's kind of equal that I need to rewatch.
Yeah.
Because like Last Jedi, the first time I saw it, after we did our review, I wasn't very big on it and I had a lot of issues with it. Rewatching it, a lot of it worked better for me. So I think like watching it again later at some point, like I need to revisit.
It's probably because you didn't go in your Jedi robe the second time. You know, like.
So to me, like my favorite piece of entertainment of the year was Twin Peaks: The Return because even if it was frustrating at times and didn't give you exactly what you wanted, there's like at least one or two moments that feel like the culmination of something.
Yeah.
There's like one line that a character has that's in like episode 16 that like just watching it gave me chills. Yeah. And Star Wars, like The Last Jedi even did that to some extent. Like once I rewatched it, I was like, oh, okay, well, I can get into this more. So to me, just like that was the thing that I thought about probably the most this year and read 2 books about because there was a prequel book and then a follow-up book and watched 18 hours of the episode, been watching some of the special features. There's like a documentary on the Blu-ray. It's like the man with the gray elevated hair.
I watched all that. I burned through that right.
Yeah, I watched. It was interesting. So Twin Peaks: The Return.
So I mean, like my favorite thing of the year is Twin Peaks: The Return. I also need to rewatch some things. Another thing I loved as far as horror experiences, Resident Evil 7 and VR.
Well, I didn't play in VR.
Yeah,
just Resident Evil 7.
The VR too. Like it just was a new thing. You know what I mean? Like I think that was phenomenal and. That was, if I'm looking for funhouse scares, like that's the way I want to do it. And then, so as the year went on, I would have a favorite film and it would maybe change or whatever. There are films I haven't seen. A lot of the ones up for, I guess, Oscar nominations or Oscar buzz, I haven't seen, like Call Me By Your Name. I know a lot of people have talked about that. But for me, the top 3, and again, I've only seen them once, would be War for the Planet of the Apes, Blade Runner 2049, and The Last Jedi. I never expected The Last Jedi. Like I told my wife that today, and she was like blown away that like Star Wars made like one of my top lists, and that one did. Even though I've told her, man, that movie's really good. Like I keep telling her, like
it's really good.
I don't want to tell you to go see it because you just don't like those films, but it's really good. War for the Planet of the Apes, I think, was a phenomenal cap to that trilogy. I know they're talking about making more and stuff like that, but. It really is something like I think it is the best trilogy we have right now of this era, and I think it's gotten a little lost. Like if it would have came out 10 years ago or more, it would have been more in the forefront just because it's easy to get lost in conversation of all the Marvel films that come out, and those like big story arcs that's happening. But I think War of the Planet of the Apes was even better than I think Battle for the Planet of the Apes. But I definitely recommend watching that trilogy. I think it is phenomenal. Blade Runner 2049, I want to watch that again.
Yeah.
For sure. It's hard to say really where I'm going to land on that.
Yeah.
But I walked out of the theater extremely happy with how that
incredible visuals.
Extremely happy with how that turned out. And I was like, okay, I want to get a 4K TV for this movie alone. And then, The Last Jedi, it appended all my expectations of it. And I can't believe they made that film and Disney let them make that. So I don't know where it's going to land. It may not even end up being any of those films. Like Moonlight was my favorite film the previous year. Super enjoyed all 3 of those things and highly recommend watching that Apes trilogy for sure because it is phenomenal and it is a spectacle that I imagine was like how Star Wars was in the 70s and 80s, where it's like, you're seeing something almost new because they are CGI characters, but the motion capture and the way it's handled, they feel like real characters. And I don't know, it is so phenomenal. I love those films.
So I guess too, just real quick before we wrap up. So for 2018, I'm just going to go through a list of movies coming out in 2018 and just name which single one you're the most excited for. These are just ones we're aware of.
And you didn't list Insidious. I know there's...
Insidious for The Last Key comes out January
for new release.
Are we doing video podcast for that? Or a video review for that instead of podcast though?
No, we'll figure out.
Yeah.
So just briefly going through stuff that's coming out aside from Insidious: The Last Key, because that's coming out so soon. So in 2018, on August 3rd, there's The Predator. On July 13th, there's The Nun, the next spinoff in the Conjuring cinematic universe. On June 22nd, there's Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. On March 9th, there's Strangers Prey at Night. On October 5th, there's Venom. On October 19th, there's Halloween. Ash vs. Evil Dead Season 3 comes back on February 25th. The New Mutants, the X-Men kind of spin-off film, comes out on April 13th. The Black Panther comes out on February 16th. And Avengers Infinity War comes out on May 4th. So out of all that stuff, like single most thing that everybody's excited for, I guess I'll start. To me, it's Halloween because you have I have no idea what that's going to be because you have Danny McBride and David Gordon Green co-writing it and Gordon Green directing, and it just feels like something very different than what we've seen from him before. And I'm just really excited to see what they do with that franchise because I just really have no idea what to expect tonally or anything. So I'm just more excited to see what happens with that. Other stuff like Venom, I'm excited to see where it goes because I have no idea what that's going to be. The Predator, like Shane Black being involved, that's going to be interesting. But to me, Halloween is one where it's like I have no idea what that's going to be, so I'm excited to see what happens with it.
Mine was one that wasn't on the list. It's not going to be a surprise that people listen to podcasts, but the Dark Phoenix, for one reason, is
the X-Men.
The reason why I say that is that kind of you had a dud with Apocalypse. Like I like it, but it's a dud. The first two were good. You know, you had
it's expected November 2nd.
Yeah, you had First Class, which I think overall is a good film. You have Days of Future Past, which is my favorite Marvel movie that's been made. So this one, to me, you can make up for the kind of crappy movie that Apocalypse was and kind of salvage that group of movies. Or if you go down the same path that Apocalypse went down, then you just scrap that franchise as a whole and just let Disney do what they're going to do.
So the other thing that surprised me with the X-Men films is Michael Fassbender, James McAvoy have not aged much from the 1960s and 1990s.
Which I said, I don't put much into that, you know.
It's comic booking.
It's comic book. But I'm saying, to me, this is, if they do this right and it's good, you're out of the Bryan Singer verse. You don't have him involved in this on probably any level.
Based on everything that's coming out, it's probably good for them.
Yeah, which is good. They already went that way before. They have a new director who's been with the franchise a lot. I think all the way through. So hopefully they can fix what they've done wrong with Apocalypse, get back on the right track, and just make a good film. It doesn't have to be a good X-Men film. It just needs to be a good film, and hopefully they can do that. And I think they might.
Well, it's targeted for November 2nd, so we'll see if it still hits that date.
So it's hard for me to pick exactly, a little bit of cop out, but basically The Predator and Halloween. One, The Predator, Shane Black, you know, I think he's a phenomenal director and writer. I can't wait to see what he does with that. I'm interested to see, because he defies expectations while also maybe sticking close to whatever genre he's tackling as well.
Yeah.
So he just can make a good, fun film. Halloween, you know, the things they've said about it, I'm almost feeling like they're going to go more down the line than I expected. So, you know, much like the Blair Witch, maybe.
Yeah.
So that maybe would be less exciting, but.
Well, still, it's unknown exactly what they're going to do because they've had somewhat contradictory statements.
Yeah.
And then things that they said that kind of got fan backlash. They're going to stray too far from the known mythology.
Yeah. Well, so, I think they've basically just said like it's you know, going to be like a thrilling thing with hardly no jokes. They said maybe one joke in it, and I'm not saying it has to be funny, but you know, I don't know. So I'm interested in that. I hope it is a very interesting movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it would be cool to get a really good Halloween one, but I want to see a very interesting Halloween movie that is also good. So it's between those two. The Halloween one, that's the one that you're most like, this could go either way and kill this franchise off again forever. Like the Predator's not in a good space either.
No.
And I'm okay with that. Like I'm more interested in Halloween.
There's not many stakes.
Well, too, like with the Halloween, I think John Carpenter says to me the final one regardless.
Yeah, like it just, you know, having Jamie Lee Curtis, all that, like that's the more exciting one probably.
Yeah.
But I'm also very excited to see The Predator.
Yeah, I am Predator. So I'm excited for.
So that wraps up our discussion of 2017 and some things we're looking forward to in 2018. So if you're listening via iTunes, you can do us a huge favor and leave a review that helps other people find the podcast. If you're listening or watching via YouTube, you can do us a big favor and watch some of our other short films because we got those out there. So under our playlist HBTVS Presents. There's some stuff out there.
Thanks for watching all year long too.
Yeah.
Podcasts,
thanks.
shorts, commenting,
Anybody-
everything like that.
Like we always
appreciate
enjoy
it.
seeing comments. I know some people came in from the Twin Peaks videos we were doing, so we talked enough about Twin Peaks this year, I think. And then other people have been following us along. So yeah, I mean, definitely we appreciate everybody taking the time to watch or comment or anything like that, because there's so much content out there. The fact that anybody at all listens to stuff that we do is quite exciting in and of itself. So thank you for listening throughout the year and commenting and everything like that. If you want to see more stuff we're doing in the future, just make sure you follow us on social media on Facebook and Instagram are the ones we use the most. We also use Twitter and also, of course, YouTube, where we post all the videos. So just make sure to follow us there. All the links to all that stuff is on housebyvideostore.com, where you also have all the articles we put out and then more information about the podcast and the notes and all that stuff. If you want to see more of that type of stuff. Then if you want to follow us specifically on the internet, you can find me on Twitter at William Caps.
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at MetaWorld Eric.
And I'm at Bloody Sean on Twitter and at Sean2D2 on Instagram.
Yeah, but just make sure on Instagram to follow HBTVS_official, because that's where we post a lot of stuff, including upcoming episodes will be on the podcast and such. So yeah, so follow us there. But that'll bring this episode of the House by Video Store podcast to a close. Thanks for listening.